I hate it here. No, I'm kidding.
As per usual. No.
I'm kidding. I just
You can't say that when we have a guest.
I just want to see Mike's reaction.
This is like Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. Like, I'm watching these two people just like, I hate it. Our non-existent child drowned in the pool, and I'm just sitting there like sipping my bourbon, like, well, okay, this was worth it. This was absolutely worth it.
I used to be an admissions counselor for a school, and we used to have to go to this college fair that ahead of time, it was in Greenwich, Connecticut, and ahead of time, the PTA would invite the admissions counselors to go to like random houses for like a home cooked meal. And like in the middle of travel season, when you haven't had a home cooked meal in like 2 months, you're like, yes, I will do this. TLDR, lots of drunk arguing with the family while you sit around going, the chicken's delicious, people I don't know. And I hope that you can drive me sober back to the school where I have to do the college fair. Thank you.
As someone who grew up about 15 minutes from Greenwich, Connecticut, I can think of the exact like Chad and Marjorie that you might be describing here.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. The woman who drove me had like a tree, like an apple tree lined driveway that had deer eating out of it. It was really picturesque and beautiful. And as we got into her Escalade, she got about halfway down this mile long driveway and went, I could do this. And I was like, I could do this. If you want, I'll drive your Escalade. I've never driven an Escalade. I'm like trying to like get her to let me drive, and she's like, no. And it was the scariest ride of my life. I like almost kissed the pavement when I got to the school.
Yeah, that's incredibly dramatic. That's like something you would see on a show like Lost, right? It's like somebody driving like, gotta go talk to my my alcoholic husband now.
Listen, though. It's time I tell you guys. It was Jack's dad was the one that drove me.
Wow.
Sad times. He was just wearing a wig.
I'm surprised you're alive then.
Yeah, exactly.
That's how bad it was.
So moving into that segue, welcome everyone to episode 11 of Hot Mess Moments. And we have a special guest here.
It's me. Hi,
yeah,
I'm Beth. Oh, wait. No, not me. Sorry.
Yeah. We have Mike Bloom here. Mike, do you want to introduce yourself?
Well, I'm not nearly as special as Beth, but I'm happy to be here as a guest. I guess I'm a normal guest in that regard. Hello, everybody. My name is Mike Bloom. I do a butt ton of podcasting and writing out there. I'm an entertainment reporter and podcaster. I cover a lot of reality. Oh, thank you. You are worthy.
We're just bowing down. We're buying.
Thank you. Thank you. Please stand. Oh, please. You sit down. You don't need a standing ovation.
Gosh.
Don't wheel the cake back. I don't need the cake right now. So I get to podcast about a lot of reality television, specifically on the Rob Has a Podcast Network, Survivor, Big Brother, The Amazing Race, Tough as Nails, Top Chef, International Survivor editions, etc., etc. But I think the more pertinent to this conversation coverage that I do is over on a post-show recaps, where I'd say the main one that I'm doing right now is a podcast called Down the Hatch. With a man by the name of Josh Wigler. It is an episodic rewatch. Yep, exactly. Legend in his own right. An episodic rewatch of the show Lost. And we started that back in August of 2019. We are currently in the first third of season 5. We've been covering an episode every week. Those have been so much fun, so long. Each podcast goes about 2 or 3 hours, but we get in depth into the episode. And so this episode that we covered today, I have not doted upon since I want to say like November or October 2019, when things were simpler back then.
Yeah.
One might say in many regards. So it's been fun to look back. But that's the main thing that I do. Of course, we are spoiler filled in that regard. So I'm going to try my best, put on my best performance, try to pull a Gracie here from the Nanny and like coming out with a case of stage fright and not react whatsoever to the wackadoo stuff that Beth is saying.
That's right.
But I'm assuming that's the reason why I'm in this apple tree laden driveway that is Hot Mess Meltdowns podcast is because of my supposed quote unquote expertise, which I'm really as much of an expert as like John Locke is at tracking, right? Of like I know a few things and I'm bullshitting the rest of it, but I'm happy to be here nonetheless.
But you know what? If there's anything I've learned going to a liberal arts college, is that everything is bullshit. You just have to find your own artful way to craft it so that it makes sense as some kind of argument, and the people just kind of go with it. So we'll take it.
Yeah.
That is pop cultural analysis to a T. Is you're back in your English class and you're like, what does the thematic representation of eyes, mean in this particular piece? And you really have to interpolate a lot of meanings from that. And depending on the manner of which you speak about it, pepper in some $2 words that you got, and people will be like,
Yes.
I never saw it that way, but I absolutely see where you're coming from, even if you're just coming in with gobbledygook. So and this is a lesson, kids, that like you can make it, I suppose, if you're able to cover your ass enough,
Yes,
and
absolutely.
make people feel like you know
Yeah.
what you're talking about.
Fake it till you make it, baby. That's the industry. And I guess we're in it. I don't know where that was going, but that's where I'm going with it.
So despondent by the end of just like,
That's
Yeah.
what we're in.
we can do
we're-
this.
We're winded. But
Winded.
Hey, a gust of wind.
Hey, what's up?
Remember when I said I hate it here? No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
So these 2 episodes that we're going to be covering today is episode 12 of The Nanny, The Show Must Go On, and then episode 11 of Lost, which is All the Best Cowboys Have Daddy Issues, which that title still gets me every time.
Yeah, I've accidentally abbreviated it on our podcast to All the Best Daddies, and I hope that due to the sake of this podcast, maybe you could cop that as well. I think it makes sense for you too as well to just refer to this as All the Best Daddies.
Well, that's how I was going to refer to it for sure. Also, hashtag Pride Month. Like, come on, we want all the daddies to come out and showcase their truest selves, and we're here for it. So
Yeah, especially if they're dressed as a cowboy. I mean, I'm down for that.
hey,
Assless
Hello.
chaps ahoy.
and just so you know, Mike, we do a lot of talk, specifically when we're going to talk about The Nanny, about being hashtag horny for Maxwell. So
Oh my God.
and by we, I mean Dylan does a lot about that. So don't worry, there's going to be quite a bit of fun pride talk. But I also know that you used to cover Drag Race, so you'll get a lot.
Listen,
of
I'm not afraid to say that a man is attractive or not.
Yeah.
I don't
We love
know
it.
if I see it with Maxwell personally.
Yeah.
I think the hair is a little too high for me, in my opinion. Look, considering I'm looking at Dylan right now, and I
Fran
can
or
understand
Maxwell?
both.
Yeah.
Well, I can understand why Dylan's maybe going for like the height of the hair. It's a bit too much of like a
Yeah.
bouffant for me.
It is. Yeah.
Especially
Yeah.
with I mean, good for him for showing off that streak of gray, right? Making him look like a wolf. But like,
Yeah.
I don't know if that's necessarily my personal aesthetic. I'm not going to yuck your yum though.
No, that makes sense.
You were the I've never heard people say yuck your yum until our friend who does some of our editing sometimes for us, or like puts together graphics, Stefanduck, also known as Jackson. I've never heard that. You're the second person who said that, and I love that phrase.
It's a college thing. I remember people in college always saying, "Don't yuck my yum." Like I don't know.
That's weird.
I like
Wait,
it.
did you went to a college where that was the thing
Well,
people
yeah,
were
I
saying
was-
around campus?
Yeah, because I was the president.
You went to college in the Midwest, you know. it's just- there you
Yeah.
go. No.
So I was the president of our LGBTQI plus student body organization, and so there was a lot of like kink talk. So we'd always say, "I don't want to yuck your yum," and that was
Okay.
like the phrase for it. So,
Or
like,
could you make up like a different term specifically for kinks? Like, I don't want to stink on your kink, but
oh, I like it.
yes, I got the fan.
Brilliant.
That's what I want.
Brilliant.
Beautiful. That was
Brilliant.
beautiful.
I'm here for it. Oh, that's great.
Thank
All right.
you.
So I actually think it'd be interesting. So Mike, for both episodes of The Nanny and Lost, we have a thing. There's 2 main things that we do. So for The Nanny, we have our outfit of the episode that we always mention at some point during our Nanny recap. Then we have our
Ooh.
MVP and LVP.
Okay.
So if you want, as we're talking about both episodes of Lost and The Nanny, you can give us your own MVP and LVP
Absolutely.
for the episode, and then we'll rate the episodes at the very beginning before we actually get into the recap.
All right.
So-
I have an outfit top of mind that I'm already so excited to talk about.
I feel like I know what it is, and I'm going to wait and see what it is when we get to that
Okay,
point.
well,
but
see if this
I wanna
prediction's
if it's right.
correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
There.
So let's get into our recap of The Nanny then.
She had style, she had flair, she was there. That's how she became the nanny.
Let's
Here we go.
we have episode 12, The Show Must Go On. I'll tell my personal thoughts, then I'll move over to you, Mike, just to see what you think. I thought this episode was all right. It wasn't my favorite. I didn't think it was okay. Wait, Mike, based off what we've seen so far in season 1, this one wasn't bad.
Okay.
But it wasn't like my favorite.
Is this the worst episode of the season?
No. Oh, no.
Oh, okay, good.
I think the reason why, so I've had this like roller coaster of emotions with Gracie's character, where sometimes
started off high. Gracie was his favorite character for like the first.
Was she? Okay, yeah. So I mean, listen. Let's do full disclosure here. So I've seen bits of the Nanny. You know, when I was raised by Nick at Night. Like I remember watching specifically that animated opening sequence at like 9 p.m. weekdays. Stuck with me. But God help me if I could remember anything else about the series before watching it today. Did Gracie start out as sort of like a Stephanie Tanner precocious child actress? Is that what drew you to her early on?
I think I liked her because I was seeing it from a 2021 lens, and we had started this like post 2020. So she was kind of the representation of like, oof, I'm over this. I've got a lot of anxiety and I have a lot of this and that. And so I thought it was really funny to see this like kid character in a show kind of represent this style of humor. But as the show has gone on, I've realized she is a one-note character, and that is literally all they use her for, is to like be a comedy prop of like anxiety and mental health disorders and stuff like that. So this episode, she wasn't as bad. I actually thought she was like, this is probably the best episode, like centric episode of hers that I really liked. My issue with this episode is, and correct me if I'm wrong, it felt really fast to me.
This was a fast episode.
Yeah, they introduced the concept and they like directed and put up an entire production in 15 minutes, if that.
Yep. That's how it works in real life though, right? When you put up together a production, it only takes like, like a day.
Well, I mean, the thing is, you're saying that tongue in cheek, but I previously worked for a company that job was to come into a town on a Monday, put up an entire show, cast all the kids in it, teach them everything, provide all the costume set pieces, do performances like Friday, Saturday, take everything down, drive on Sunday, and start all over again.
Wow.
So it could happen. The Mickey Rooney, Judy Garland, let's put on a show era is still going on with the Missoula Children's Theater. Shout out.
Okay. I know exactly what you're talking about. I know the Missoula Children's Theater. I know of it. I don't know.
That's cool. Oh my gosh. I'll pick your brain about that later, because I do want to know more about this.
Yeah, it's wild. It's one of those things where I think when you look back, you're like, oh my God, I did that? Ooh. How did I survive? This was almost a decade ago, so I guess I was more energetic and less knowledgeable about work conditions in the world. But it was something to add to my log of memories that I can rely on whenever I'm just thinking about the ridiculous things I've done in my life.
So Mike, I do also want to preface something. I don't know if you had a chance I spoke a little bit about this last week in last week's episode, but one of the things I discovered about the production aspect of this, having watched each episode of the show like easily 25 times, like it's all like literally my all-time favorite show. I found out last week through a new interview that came out with the actor who plays Niles the Butler that they actually didn't know episode to episode if the show was going to run. So some of these episodes were like hastily written. Some of them, they would record like maybe 2, 3, 4 episodes at a time. And then it would be like, how do they do? Okay, I guess you're going to do some more. So I think that describes a little bit of like, wow, this episode is so inconsistently better or worse than the other one before it. And I personally, season 1 is great because of like the nostalgia of like, oh, this is where the show began. It's the worst season of the show. Like it just progressively gets better and better and better. Whereas some sitcoms like really do a great job in their first season, or a lot of shows just in general do well in their first season, sometimes slide in their second season. This was kind of the opposite way. So I do want to preface that, like, what a weird episode to have you come in on, which was definitely one of those ones that was like hastily written. They had a concept and they just like went with it.
I mean, that being said, I enjoyed it well enough. I think that, it actually ended up working out well for me because as was alluded to before, I am of the theatrical mind. The first thing I said on this podcast was like, "Who's afraid of Virginia Woolf?" reference. So that's like all you need to know. So I mean, once I was telling you both before we came on here, when I saw that image on HBO Max of Kiss of the Spider Woman and like a bumblebee in the background, I'm like, oh, this is fun. Okay, I like this. So checking it out, like I definitely enjoyed it. Was it next level? No, but I think it's even in its first season though, for a lesser than episode, it's like pretty strong writing, and I would say especially with performances. I think you've talked about this before. Like Fran Drescher's performance of the character Fran is like very fully realized. Yeah. And to your point, that sometimes happens with sitcoms as well. They start off in season 1 with that, and then they sort of what's known as Flanderizing them, or like after a certain point they're like, oh well, they're only known for these 1 or 2 things, but it's still this fun new territory of we're exploring facets of this character. So I thought it was an enjoyable thing. There are some interesting aspects to this. Obviously this is going to concentrate a lot on the one kid and not on the other 2, to the point that I don't know who the other 2 are. I just called them Bangs and Macaulay Culkin in my notes.
Time out. Who is who? Because literally Bangs and Macaulay Culkin could go either way. I'm just saying.
Bangs I was the older daughter.
It's Maggie.
The prominent Bangs in the bottom. Macaulay Culkin was obviously like he seems like the real Stephanie Tanner. Of course, another Mitter child, like the real precocious, sarcastic boy of the family.
Yeah. He's the only boy. There's there's a lot of, we kind of talked about it a little bit, like there's a lot of him trying to aspire to Maxwell. There's like a little bit of favoritism with Maxwell that we've kind of seen shades of, with like, oh, that's my boy kind of thing. But it's I think the Stephanie Tanner element is probably quite accurate for Brighton.
And I was what I really, what was great about this type of show, and this happened in a lot of the 90s especially, is the theme song that tells you what the story is. I know we laugh at it now, especially in the days of serialized television, including comedies, but man, I was thanking my lucky stars, because I was putting myself back in the mind frame of like, if I happened upon this and I don't know what the hell the nanny is, then you have a song that's, she got kicked out and now she's living with the family, like she's a nanny. They're throwing in, words like joie de vivre into the middle of the theme. Yeah, I was like, God. Look at this. Like, it's got a nice little jazzy tune as well. It really checks all the boxes in terms of its.
It really does. And yet it didn't do well in the Renap theme song bracket a couple months ago, which was honestly horrifying. I will just put that out there.
The problem was, I think you were dealing with Jews and Jew-adjacent people from New York. I think they felt a little too close to home for them.
There you go.
They saw Fran Drescher and they're like, I don't want to get anywhere near this, so I'm just going to put it out of my memory. Let me explore the wilds of the OC instead.
Yes, exactly. Could you imagine if Lost had like a jazzy opening? They'd be like, they were on a plane and then it crashed and no one knows what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, that was Gilligan's Island, right?
So, seriously.
Oh, now you're making me want someone to animate a Lost intro just for Lost, and then do a previously on the nanny of the nanny for like a past
slop it up.
Nanny.
Yeah. Freaky Friday.
Okay, this has to happen.
Yeah, and we might need to hire someone to like actually make this, because I would love that.
I'll write it, but someone just do it. Just do it. That'll be great.
You'll be the producer. You have to find the director.
That's right. I'm gonna get fired from being the director and be the producer. Which, speaking of which, let's get into the episode itself. So in this episode, we start off with we hear that there's going to be a PTA meeting at Gracie's private school, which I think they called it Lexington Academy. I was like, what a great generic name for a New York City like private school. We'll take one of the avenues. Lexington, great.
Yeah.
Put Academy at the end of it. I was like, excellent.
So I don't know, Beth, if you're what your bingo card said, this is the outfit I wanted to talk about. Because what in the ever loving fuck was this thing that she was wearing?
Wait, are you talking about the one where she was trying to pick the outfit, or the actual outfit she wore?
The actual outfit she was wearing, not the one that she's like, oh, the form fitting versus the one that makes me look thin. The clown that she skinned and was wearing underneath a black vest. That's the outfit I'm talking about.
That is the iconic Fran Fine block color blouse, black vest combo from season 1. We've seen it a few times in season 1.
But there's a difference between block color and like garish highlighter party. That's what I saw.
true.
Yeah, it's so true. Yeah, I don't know why. Like season 1, we started this idea of like the outfit of the episode because she is well known for the series of just having like the most iconic fashion. I will say that fashion does not necessarily happen as much in season 1 when they're trying to get their bearings and they don't have as many deals with designers and all that kind of stuff. So you get this kind of, like you said, jester wearing a vest outfit.
Yeah. I actually thought my outfit of the episode was the one she actually goes to the PTA meeting with. Because I was kind of digging this like, or no, I'm sorry, that was not my outfit of the episode. Almost was. But like the studs on the dress were very cute. I was like, okay. Cute in a Fran sense. So I'm gonna use cute very like, sparingly for that. But yeah, Fran, you work, girl. It looked great on her.
You obviously can't answer this, Beth, but I do wonder if there's going to be some sort of like storyline down the line where it's like Maxwell sponsors her like new fashion line or something, you know, like that feels like where it's naturally going for me of like, oh, I want to become entrepreneurial. I'm going to start my own fashion company. Mr. Sheffield, can you sponsor it? And he's able to. And so she sort of like, you know, becomes the next Ralph Lauren for a big portion of time.
Ooh.
I would love that. That's a great theory about like later seasons because I've always struggled. So my original theories in past episodes of this podcast, I theorized that Maggie Bangs, she ends up becoming Fran in a sort. It's like Fran rubs off on her in a way to where she goes from being very introverted in the first episode to now we're starting to see her become more and more extroverted and much more opinionated and much more
boy crazy
and stuff like that. So my theory was that she's going to take it on at least at some point too far, and we're gonna have to reel her back in. But I have noticed that as the first season has gone on, a lot of my theories for stuff that was going to happen in like seasons like 3 and 4 are already starting to happen in this season. So I'm like, what is going to happen? That's a great theory though, that Fran ends up going down this fashion route. Like she gets with Maxwell. She's not really the nanny anymore, but she's still taking care of the kids. She ends up going down a fashion entrepreneurial route. I love it. I want it to happen.
I think it's gotta, I mean, if not, you know, if and when there's a reboot, then that's when it's gotta happen.
Yeah.
Speaking of the reboot, just because there's been theories about it, and she's already said that if there were to be a reboot, it would like not take off like where they left off or anything like that. So this would in no way be any kind of spoiler. She was like, I've decided that if I needed to have a new nanny character, I want it to be played by Cardi B. And I was like, that is random, but I also kind of want to see it. She's like the only person I could think of that could wear like crazy things like Fran did in the 90s, but like put it in like 2021 or whatever. And I was like, you know what? I kind of like that. Could you imagine Cardi B being a nanny and just being like, you know, it just would be so good.
Do you think Fran Drescher likes WAP? You think that's why she thought of Cardi B?
Oh, probably.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, she fights for women's reproductive rights because of like she had uterine cancer that was like not diagnosed early enough. She kept saying, no, there's something wrong with me. And she went through like 4 doctors and they all said no. So she's done a lot with female rights and female reproductive systems and all that kind of stuff. So I think she do like herself a little WAP. Just put it out there.
I just want to see Fran Drescher dance to WAP now. Like
I want to see Fran Drescher read the lyrics to WAP personally.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
We were talking about last episode. We want to get like we would do a GoFundMe to have Fran Drescher do a full reading of the Twilight series, but with her own colorful commentary in between. Like
just be like, oh Edward, I don't know. And like just like do like random stuff like that. Halfway through, be like,
yeah. Well, I'm for that. I think like I mean that was sort of what she built her career upon for a while. Like it was her and Gilbert Gottfried of like, hey, here's how piercing my voice is. But people will enjoy me because of that. Again, it's an odd time when I think now we live in times where it's like, God, your voice is annoying. I hate you right now.
Yeah.
It's odd to think of a time where people are like, God, I love how annoying they are.
Oh yeah. And that's the thing too. Like a lot of people felt like she was putting on that voice for the character. And she was like, who would make this up? Like, who would make up this voice? I'm limited in what I can do in Hollywood because I'm always just going to be the woman from Queens who has a really nasal voice. Like, that's like what she would always have to play. So she was like, let me just take that and run with it and become the lead of my own series. And I was like, you better work with that.
Is there any story as to why she chose the character she plays to have the same first name as hers?
She, in every sitcom she's done, so she's done The Nanny, she's done Living with Fran, which happened in the like mid 2000s or early 2000s. And then in the early 2010s, she did Happily Divorced. They're all loosely based off of some aspects of her life. And so you see a lot of like her family doing a lot of guest stars and those kind of things. And she always has her character's first name is Fran. Like, always.
Wow.
So she is Fran in all three of those shows. She just has a different last name.
I mean, it's not unheard of, right? I think about Home Improvement when
I'm just going to say Tim.
Tim Allen, or Who's the Boss? Tony Danza played a character named Tony.
Yeah.
So like, there's definitely a precedent for it. I just always find it interesting when characters have the first name of the main character be the same name as their first name, but with a different last name for whatever reason.
Yeah. And her parents' names in the show are the same as her parents' names off the show. Her parents' names are Sylvia and Morty. And so she wrote them into the show to be Sylvia and Morty. And her grandmother's name or nickname was Yetta. And her grandmother in this show is named Yetta. So she does a lot of that. And we've only seen Yetta once in this season. And it's not a spoiler to say, like, she comes back like every once in a while.
Oh, they're going to say she dies.
No, well,
she dies in episode.
And, you know, it's not a spoiler to say something that hasn't happened. No, she apparently her real life Yetta watched the show and said, "I don't talk like that.
Oh,
I don't act like that. How dare you?" And then she was like taking a
happened.
huge drag of a cigarette when she did it. It went, and she was like complaining about the fact that the characters like she's smoking too much. I don't smoke like that, as she like takes a huge drag of a cigarette or something like that. So
this is what happens when you like, I guarantee you, if she was 1 degree removed and she like named the characters slightly different, including her own, her grandmother wouldn't know anything. She'd be like,
oh, 100%.
I wonder what this is based off of. Oh,
Yeah.
Great. Give me more Marlboros. Let me watch The Nanny some more.
Yeah, exactly.
So I want to talk about since I think we should just cover it kind of loosely this episode, because the plot, like we said, goes by super quick. It's like play, director, Fran becomes a producer after Maxwell steps in, and then Gracie has a bad time when her father's the director, and so then the lesson is learned that, like, you know, you can't be so hard on these
but
kids.
Is it? It's not. They use reverse psychology to get her on stage. Like,
yeah, that's weird. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, well, man, like Maxwell learns he's an. That's the other thing that I think is interesting about this. Again, like, correct me if I'm wrong. Is it usually that sort of like sitcom-y, sappy, everyone learns a lesson? Or is it like this episode where it's like it's more of a twisted thing of like, yeah, nobody really learns their lessons?
I've called out the show a few times on like the lesson that you're supposed to learn is not actually what's being taught. So like,
yeah,
there is one episode that happened a while back where there is kind of this unhealthy obsession with the kids that they keep treating Fran as if Fran is their mother.
Okay.
And
well, what's the situation with the mother? Is she like
she has
passed
passed
away?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so
that makes sense.
So by the end of that episode, it's seen as like, oh, this is healthy for the kids. And I'm like, this is not healthy per se. It's cool that they have like someone to look up to. Not cool that they're replacing their maybe recently deceased mother with the nanny. Like, I don't know if that's the lesson I want to be learning by the end of the episode, but
I will also say that it is very much in line of this show to have a lesson that's tongue in cheek.
True.
So
Okay.
it's like, here's the lesson, but those that are teaching the lesson aren't following it. And that's like the joke. The joke is like, we're teaching something, but did everyone really learn anything? You know, in typical sitcom fashion, sometimes it's the same themes of jokes happening over and over and over, just presented in different ways. And you know what? It still works. I don't know.
Yeah.
I love it personally.
So This whole thing sounds incredibly convoluted to me. Have any of you heard of a PTA pageant before? Not a school pageant, one put on by the PTA specifically.
I mean, that's the thing. I don't know if it was a PTA pageant as much as it was like, here, guys, we need to have all of your help to pitch in for this school production kind of thing. Because I have had that where we've had to have parents get involved with school productions or marching bands or normally it's arts. It's not like sports related. But yeah, I agree. They're all looking at Maxwell because he's a Broadway producer to like step in and he's doing that. Oh no, no one look at me. That kind of thing. It's the thing I think that makes this episode weaker than anything else is that all the other episodes have perpetuated some kind of relationship or storyline forward, even if they haven't been great. Yeah. We really don't get any storyline here. There's nothing that's new between any of the relationships with any of them. Like, it doesn't matter who like Maxwell with Gracie, nothing really changes there. Fran with Gracie, nothing changes there. Fran and Maxwell, nothing changes there. So it's like, and everybody else doesn't really matter in the episode, right? So it's just kind of like,
because like you said, for a lot of the episodes so far in season 1, there has been something that has like changed the narrative, which is kind of what I was remarking about earlier, where it's like things have moved so rapidly in season 1 that we're hitting storylines that I thought we wouldn't hit until like season 3, especially in the relationship between Maxwell and Fran. So it was kind of weird to have this episode that felt like it went by really quick and nothing really of merit was there. Like, it was funny. There was definitely some funny moments. But there wasn't anything by the end of it that I felt like if I had missed this episode, I would have missed out on like what the storyline of season 1 was.
Yeah.
So I guess my only question to that would be, has Maxwell ever been shown to be as intense in previous episodes? No. So maybe that's the new thing to glean from it is like there he has one thing that makes him go aggro and a little OTT, and in this case it's like putting on a show.
That's true, actually.
That's actually really fair. Like, he so far, I think this is definitely, he's had the most to do in this episode than he has in any other episode. Okay,
because I was wondering about that as well. Of like, how is he a secondary lead, or is he more so like it's Fran and then there's the ensemble of everyone else and everyone gets their moment?
Yeah,
it's mostly been it's Fran, and then normally one of the children have like their moment, and so like this one was like a Gracie centric one for as far as the children are concerned. He hasn't really had too much. It's normally him being asked for permission for things or inserting like, how come you're doing it this way or something like that. Like when Fran has an unorthodox thought or something like that, and I really think that this episode, we see much more of an emotional range from Maxwell. So I think that that's actually a really fair point to bring up about him. Like, we haven't seen him get really angry since like the pilot, maybe when he was upset about Maggie kissing a boy. Like,
I do want to discuss the one character, and I'm going to say it right now, is my MVP that shined so bright in this episode was Cece. Like,
for her like 10 seconds that she's in the episode, but just kills it.
Is that Julie Bowen lookalike? That's what I put in my notes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The blonde, she's Maxwell's business partner.
Oh, I was wondering because they acknowledge literally none of her relationship.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, is she the mom? Is she?
Oh, good call. No, she's she's his like assistant producer. And she's like a ruthless, like businesswoman, hates children, like has obsessed and has a huge crush on Maxwell, like this whole thing. And so normally, and also like pretty much what we've seen so far is that she yearns for Maxwell, sees Fran as some kind of competition, and that Niles, who's the butler, always is like putting her down and such. And so like kind of leveling her out. So they have kind of like an antagonistic relationship, which is like the side characters that are fun. They're like the Jack and Karen, if this was Will and Grace.
Gotcha.
That kind of like outrageously funny, but not normally the center of attention of the episode.
But that being said, is there gonna be, was it like, oh, these characters are fan favorites, we're gonna give them more to do? Because I could imagine two paths here where Cece's a character that becomes so popular they give her more to do, like have her move in or something, or B, they say this character isn't working, let's get rid of her and focus more on everyone else.
You'll have to tune in to find out.
I suppose so.
I have a theory that I've said before that I think what's going to happen is Cece is going to walk in on an intimate romantic moment between Fran and Maxwell at some point, and it's going to destroy Cece. And she's going to be devastated, and it's going to be Fran's job to pick the pieces up of Cece and build her up to prove that there's other fish in the sea, and like she is like a perfectly good woman to go find it like the perfect man. I think it's gonna happen.
Okay.
I think Fran and Cece are gonna become friends. I could see it.
Yeah, I think I don't know if you can keep that up for 6 seasons. Like the antagonism works well for a couple. So Niles is the name of the butler?
Yes.
Okay, I just called him Moriarty because he played Professor Moriarty on Star Trek The Next Generation.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so like I have not watched Star Trek. And so we were, when I was bringing up the fact that I saw the interview was with him, they talked about how he played Moriarty. I can't say the name that well.
Moriarty. You don't roll your R's or anything.
Moriarty. Yeah. And I was like, oh, I wonder how long he was on the. But he wasn't like on for a long time, right? It was just like a few episodes, or
basically to describe what happened. So in Star Trek: The Next Generation on the Enterprise, there's something called a holodeck, which is essentially like a room. It's like a room where you can just like imagine things and they'll come to life. And there was an android character by the name of Data, and he would like to simulate Sherlock Holmes mysteries.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And so they imagine Professor Moriarty, and then they got into a couple situations where he's like, well, I want my Moriarty, like I want to be challenged. And so Moriarty's AI advanced to a level where like he became self-realized and like realized he was a hologram. And so he was a thorn in the side for a couple of episodes. And actually, I mean, we're going to talk about Star Trek in the Lost episode, and Terry O'Quinn, who plays John Locke, actually also appeared on a Star Trek: The Next Generation episode where he plays, as he himself would put it, a pretty piss poor captain. He played Commander Riker's former captain, who like ends up getting mutinied on because he sucks so badly. So yeah, there's Star Trek connections all over the place.
Wow,
that's actually funny because that they pointed that out in our comments last episode. They're like, oh my god, these two are like in an episode of The Next Generation, and I'm currently watching through Voyager, and I'm like, this makes me want to kind of start watching Next Generation.
Had you never seen it before?
Mm-mm.
It's very, I mean, listen, if you're talking about first seasons, it's definitely less of a Nanny and more of another sitcom in terms of just how it takes a while to find its rhythm, like a lot of Star Trek seasons do. Like season 3 is when it really hits into high gear. But I mean, that's my bread and butter. I love that. I don't know if it's the best. I think Deep Space Nine has a better quality overall, but like that's my comfort Star Trek. I love that cast and crew so much.
That's what I've heard. I'll have to check it out because I've heard great things. They're like, the next one you should watch after Voyager is Deep Space, or not Deep Space Nine, Next Generation.
Yeah, and then Next Generation can go into Deep Space Nine because there are some characters that cross over as well. So there's a whole series of things. Beth, this will be your next podcast series.
There we go.
Into Star Trek.
Star Trek, yeah. I like science fiction. I like fantasy. I like all that kind of stuff. So serve it up to me on a plate and I'll eat it.
That's good. I think you would love Voyager personally. Like, I think that Janeway, I think you would.
Yeah, I think Janeway, Beliana Torres, 7 of 9. Like, I think that's going to be your wheelhouse right there.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
So I want to also talk about one other element to this episode is that little girl, Andrea.
You mean Little Beth?
Well, yeah, Little Beth, basically. I was going to bring that up. Yeah, it's basically you as a child.
So, yes, you know how when children, I don't know, maybe they don't do this anymore. At least when I was going to school, they test children before kindergarten to see if they have like the cognitive and like social skills in order to like be able to succeed in kindergarten. And I think they mostly do it for children born in the summer and later to make sure they're at the, like someone who's born in November is significantly younger than at that age than somebody who's born in February when it comes to school. And I apparently, I go in with the testing people and I come out and I'm like, because I'm me. And my parents say that the testing woman came out and said, boy, she's dramatic, isn't she? And my mom was mortified. And I was just, they were like, what did you do? And I was like, I put on a play. And they're like, okay, good job.
Wait, so but like, what was the test? Was it just like, entertain me?
Well, I think they ask you like questions, and they do like, okay, do you know your colors? Do you know your shapes? Like those kind of things. And they also, this is the other part of the testing that I know happened. They read me a story about a monkey named Bananas that liked apples. And when they asked me at the end, what did the monkey like to eat? And I said bananas. They told my parents, we don't think she's ready for kindergarten because her reading comprehension. And they're like, you tried to trick a 4-year-old.
That's the riddle of the Sphinx for pre-K.
Like, you have a very high bar.
Answer my riddle, young Beth, if you want to get into kindergarten.
Like if I had said watermelon, maybe let's talk about this. But I went for what the logical that I heard. I know that monkeys eat bananas.
And who's to say that Bananas didn't like bananas? It's his freaking name. Or do you think he
his namesake?
Or do you think he resents it? Like, well, Kim, when my parents named me freaking bananas, I don't even like bananas.
I know, I'm gonna be pears. I like pears better. But I just, so that was funny. I went to kindergarten. It was fine. Although that's.
What if you never went? Like you never got schooled? Like that was the end of it.
Which, by the way, hysterical considering both my parents are educators. So it would have been like, no, we're not sending you to school. You're just gonna have to like, become a wolf woman in the woods. Just like send you on your way.
I love that.
Honestly, I'm here for it.
And then you put on little plays for like forest animals, like in the woods.
Don't try me. I would have. I tried when I was younger to recruit my cats into a play, and they would not listen and take direction. I was very upset about it. I was like, stay here. And they would move. I'm like,
I think dogs, you might have done a better job. But yeah, I think of all the household pets.
I didn't have any dogs. Otherwise, I probably would have tried.
Fish, then dogs, then cats. Fish and steak. Still. But yeah, that girl was, that's also like when you're doing the school play episode, like you have to have the overzealous kid, right? Like, or like the one who's actually talented. But again, it was a weird because like they're trying to say both she is really talented and like should get the part, but also like she's really annoying and also like a little bit manipulative with threatening to push Gracie off the stage. So I wasn't sure what I'm supposed to laugh at this character about.
Okay. Everything you just said absolutely lives, and you should know this as working with children's theater. There's that one kid that will do anything to get in the spotlight. They'll push a kid off the stage. They could be very talented. They're annoying as hell. That's me. Hi, I'm Beth Dixon. When I was a child, I auditioned for Annie and did not get Annie. Didn't even get any of the good orphans. I got Duffy. And I tried very hard to take other people's lines. So I learned all of them beforehand. And when they didn't get them, I would say, this is what your line is. And I would say it out loud. So annoying, manipulative, loud girl.
Okay, I was going to say, like, is this one of those things where, like, there were too many kids, so they made up a character named Duffy? But no, it seems like Duffy was an actual orphan.
And so Duffy in, like, the movie and, like, the actual, like, play version or musical is actually one of the bigger orphans, like, what in parts. I mean, but we did, like, Annie Jr. She's the King Kong of the orphanage.
Oh, God, the ground shaking. It's Duffy. Run.
I still remember my lines. This was 6th grade. One of them was, can anybody get any sleep around here? That was number 1. Number 2 was, yeah. Nailed that one.
Beautiful.
Number 3 was, gee, Annie's on the radio, coast to coast. She's famous. So I'm just saying, nailed it. You're welcome.
Yeah, you did that. Duffy. Like, Duffy. Honestly, I'm now curious. I want to know like what other plays you've been in, because I could see you being like a big theater person, especially like knowing that your family has like a whole band and like.
Oh, you mean me? I thought you were talking Mike.
No.
I was gonna say like we could do an entire hour on that.
Oh no, I'm just curious.
My resume.
Love it.
No, I was just curious about Beth because like your family like comes like you're all performers, you're all like kind of theater people. I'm gonna pick your ear about it because I know you've done a lot of stuff.
I have. And the one that actually connects to this, which I wanted to make a note out just because it means a lot to me, is the song that Andrea auditions with.
Johnny One Note.
Johnny One Note, which is from the show Babes in Arms, which I did there's like 3 versions of Babes in Arms, and all of them are racist. No one should do it anymore. Just putting that out there. I was in that in 10th grade. It was my first lead role in like a production
as
ever.
the role of Duffy.
Yes, I was Duffy part 2. Actually, not lying, me in 6th grade playing Duffy, that was my character essentially in the show. The girl who just thinks that she's all that and is so talented. And it's about a whole bunch of kids that are like at a summer like playhouse essentially trying to put on their own production rather than the stupid one that they all are being forced to do. And my character thinks that she's just like this huge ingenue star, and she's just like she's like a supporting character that's like really funny, but like the comic relief kind of thing. But that song is from that show, Johnny One Note, and I love that song. It's a Rodgers and Hart musical. Rodgers and Hart, not nearly as good as Rodgers and Hammerstein, but it's from that show, so I know it intimately. So anytime I hear Johnny can only sing one note, and the note he sang was this, I wanted that girl to hold that note, and everyone wants her to shut up, and I'm like, no, you better sing your heart out.
Well,
Andrea.
I mean, the audience was, again, which is confusing things further. The audience kept going crazy for her, and so I'm like, but what am I supposed to think? Like, she's also trying to be like OTT, right? We have the stage mom that's yelling at her the entire time. So like, I'm trying to figure out. But she clearly should have gotten the part. Clear nepotism going on here. I mean, this reminds me a lot of the Full House episode in which Michelle wants to play Yankee Doodle. It should have gone to Derek. Speaking of like the Macaulay Culkin-esque kid, it does go to him at the end of the day. So again, this is a well-worn trope. I also love the fact that, and maybe this comes from the budgetary issues, Beth, and that they were sort of hopping from rock to rock. They had auditions in the home instead of at the school. Or, you know, a central location instead of someone's house.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, you already had the stage, why, like that building that they have the actual production. Why not just have the auditions at the theater?
Yeah.
It's not like you had to build a new set or like rent out a space. Like, you already have that secured.
I saw it as a way of showing that Fran didn't know what she was doing. Like she was excited to become the director of this play. And so she did what she knew, which was, hey, let's bring everyone to the house and let's do the auditions here. Because like even Maxwell's kind of like, why are there kids here? Like, what? Do
you have a call sheet? I'm sorry. Who has a call sheet for elementary school kids in a school production that clearly the PTA is running?
Yeah, exactly. These kids woke up at the ass crack of dawn for this EPA. They walked down to the Sheffield house. They put their name down. Exactly. They hung out for a little while, hoping like, okay, I'm non-ec, but maybe I'll be called. You know, if they have spaces. And then poor Bernard came in and he choked. Though Bernard landed on his feet. He ended up becoming the press /
the press.
Yeah.
I like it.
Talk about that kid, because I feel like that kid's been in something.
I think that kid's my MVP personally.
He was cool.
He had the underdog story of the episode, way more than Gracie.
Like, listen, he's a performer who then, like, you know, floundered, but then was able to both serve as a member of the press, getting exclusive interviews with the director, and apparently writes this pretty scathing review. Good on him he might not find his voice on stage, but he definitely does on the page.
And guess what? Sure. He also got all those cookies backstage because the director made sure. So now he got his cookies. Get these cookies. He got them.
It's true though. I wrote down in my notes when I saw that kid actor. I was like, I feel like I've seen this kid actor in something. Like, I feel like he was probably in a few 90s family movies that came out around that time, because he looked familiar. But I agree. I actually really liked Bernard's like tiny little storyline throughout this, and his little rise to fame as someone that couldn't do well in the play and then did well as a journalist. Before we move on, because I want to make sure that we leave enough time for Lost, because it's a pretty beefy episode. It's good. It's good. I can't wait to hear your theories. My outfit of the episode is actually that jeweled vest sweater.
Yes. I think I wrote down as chainmail, right? You're talking about like the lattice.
It was so good. It reminded me of something you would see in a 90s thrift store, but like actually done really well. Like, it actually looked decent. I like that it was like chainmail. It wasn't like an actual like adhered to the shirt. It was pretty cool.
I have to say, even though I normally don't do outfit of the episode, I'm shocked and appalled that you guys haven't chosen the spider costume.
Well, I thought it was supposed to be the Fran outfit of the episode.
Oh, well, to be fair, we mostly do that. Although last week we had Sylvia for the first time. Like normally it's a Fran outfit.
No, I mean, the costumes were great. And I think I actually like LOL'd at the very last joke before the sort of outro when they did this whole big elaborate number, right? You have kids dressed as daisies and dressed as bumblebees. I don't know why it changed from mushrooms to bumblebees.
Different director.
And then Gracie comes flying in and then she just goes, itsy bitsy spider. Like it was so great. Like I really love all that build up because then it really hammers home like, yeah, this dude is trying to put on a full out production for a first grader, like 30-second play. I thought it was just a really perfect way to end. But yeah, those costumes were pretty incredible. And that was sort of the point of it too.
Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely. So who are your MVP and LVPs? I want to hear.
I'll say my LVP since I already said my MVP. I think my LVP would probably go to Maxwell, only because, like Mike said, he didn't really learn the lesson by the end of the episode, and he was still like, "All right, I got anger issues." Okay, but she did the play, so I got what I wanted. So I'd probably give my LVP to Maxwell.
Yeah, it's tough because like usually, when we do MVPs and LVPs, we do, of course, because we naturally want to complicate things in our lives. We're in an incredibly complicated system with MVPs and LVPs, but we usually give it to characters that like are bad. You know what? Actually, I'm gonna give the LVP point to the Betty White lookalike, the PTA lady.
Oh, you better work with that. Yes, I like that. Oh, you liked her.
I thought she was fun. I thought like for the role that she was filling.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. I didn't like the role that she was filling. Like, I think she was fine with it, but I think when it was like, oh, let me thirst at Maxwell's side and disparage anything that Fran does, like, no. We like Fran, so we don't like you.
She's the only one that stepped up to volunteer after she was kind of voluntold by Maxwell. Come on, give her some slack, PTA woman, lady, principal person.
Beth, do you think Fran as Huddle in her third grade production of Fiddler was like you as Duffy in the sixth grade production of Annie?
100%. And I would have died to see what little Fran Fine would have been able to pull out.
Yeah,
it would have been fun.
I mean, Huddle's a meaty role, right? I believe she's the one who gets with Perchik. I think I always mix up Huddle and Hava, but she is sort of like the intellectual black sheep of the family, as it were. So it fits in very well.
Yeah. And I think that so this show is very much, Fran is a huge fan of musical theater and theater itself. And so you actually do get to see lots of like little gems. Sometimes it's the posters that are in Maxwell's office that have like, that kind of go along with what the theme of the episode is, like, or sometimes it's like little references. I don't think it's an accident that Huddle was chosen as the character. So if you know about it, then you're like, okay, black sheep, get it, blah, 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 okay, kind of thing. So yeah, I really like that. If anybody likes theater, musical theater, and you're watching The Nanny, this is absolutely going to be right up your alley because you're going to pick up on little Easter eggs along the way like that.
The series or this episode?
The series. Like there's a lot. Yeah, and there's a lot of musical theater guests. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that like Maxwell is a Broadway producer. So one of the things that this show is known for is the quality and quantity of guest stars past season one that come and join. Because it eventually, once it found its stride after season one, people were like knocking down the doors to come like be on The Nanny.
Yeah. That makes sense. I'm excited.
Well, the second episode had Carol Channing in it. So
yeah, which I was floored. I was like, what? And then we had Cloris
playing herself.
So yeah, that was The Nanny. We got our episode 12. The show must go on. But now we need to dive into
I have to put my hair up for this.
Real meat of this podcast episode because I can't wait to hear Beth's thoughts as we enter into episode 11 of Lost. All the best cowboys have daddy issues.
No, all the daddies have issues. I think all that's all the best daddies have.
All the best daddies have issues.
Previously on Lost.
Or all the best daddies have cowboys.
Honestly, if every daddy had a cowboy, the world would be in a better place.
Just saying. Just saying.
Save a horse, ride a daddy.
Oh my God, please put it on a shirt and let me wear it.
I'm sure it is. You know that
but it doesn't even make any sense without the context that we provide here. That was good.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You know that there is some corporation making money off the fact that somebody put that on a pride shirt and they're like, I don't even care. It doesn't make sense. It's rainbow and it has this one. I'm going to wear it like 100%.
Yep.
Even without the context.
I want to get into pride merch then, because then you could just like string a bunch of phrases. Like I could put blah, blah, blah penis quite literally and put it on a shirt. And people are like, I want my blah, blah, blah penis shirt.
You better believe.
Work. Yes, slay. I want to wear that. Absolutely.
With 0% of my profits going towards any kind of LGBTQ organization. Yeah. Oh, gosh.
So like 15% of proceeds go to Chick-fil-A. And you're like, yeah.
That's what, no, we got, my wife and I got something from, she got milkshakes from Shake Shack last night, and she's like, oh, look at this new rainbow shake, and it had like raspberry and like mango, and it's like, oh, and 5% will be donated to the Trevor Project, and it costs like $3, and I'm like, you could give a little more than 5%.
5%, yeah. That's exactly it. Anybody who's like, if you have the means, if you are a corporation, at the very least 25%. Sorry, putting it out there.
Yeah,
like,
because otherwise
if you're gonna profit off of like pride, at least 25%, at least.
Yeah, agree.
Yeah, exactly. Like, oh, well, we're such great allies. That's why 6 cents of every purchase is going to go straight into the pockets of that foundation.
Speaking of this, and this is, I have stopped whenever I go through like a drive-through or something and they say, do you want to round up your change for like the Ronald McDonald House or something like that? Ronald McDonald House is maybe a little different because it's like their actual organization. I have stopped rounding up my change for any place because someone made up a really good point, which is you are paying more so that they can get a bigger tax deduction as a corporation because they gave X amount of money. And I was like, you are right.
I've never heard about it, but that's such a great point.
That is such a brilliant point, and I never even thought about it. And I was like, you're right. Why do you need 11 more of my cents? Why don't you just donate it yourself as a corporation? You don't need to charge, even if it's just cents. You don't need to charge your customers in order to do that. You are a multi-million billion-dollar corporation. Do it yourself.
Yeah, you can't be like, well, can you give us a couple more? Like, no, you're not the kid coming to dad being like, oh, can I have money for the vending machine?
Right.
Like, no, you are the vending machine. Give money to me.
So I've stopped doing that. And just put it out there.
I'm the same way. It's because most corporations, they already have a finite amount that they'll donate because they have to like write it off in advance. And so you're just giving money to offset the balance of what they're already going to give. So it's kind of pointless. It's only to make you feel good about yourself afterwards. So it's not even worth it because we're all.
Yeah. Well, no, it's that way to catch you of like, oh, like I haven't really thought about donating to any specific charities. Oh, this is an opportunity to do so. I might as well do it. It's easy enough.
Yeah.
And as someone who works for a school and was fundraising until a month ago when I switched my roles, like, I'm like, you know what? I just want people to think about being philanthropic in their own small ways and such. And that is such a cop out from a corporation that I'm like, and they kind of make people feel like, oh, I did my part. When I'm like, but you could take $5 and donate it someplace else. And that's going to be so much more of an impact than donating $5 over the course of the year with rounding up your change.
It's a tactic of manipulation that only Christian Shepherd himself can master.
It's so true. Yes. Thank you for bringing us back.
That was beautiful. I like that.
The episode at hand. This is a master podcaster at work here, just bringing us back.
Where?
So this episode of Lost, first of all, last week's episode was like one of my favorites. I really enjoyed this episode because I just was gripped the entire time. I actually made a very conscious decision. Normally I write notes. I made a conscious decision. I didn't want to write notes because I just wanted to watch. And I hadn't written down notes for the Saeed episode 2 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. And I actually found that like I remembered a lot, but I was like, we're going to have Mike and Dylan there so they can help guide me if I forget things or whatever, but we'll go from there. This episode picks up where we left off last time. So we know that I always forget Ethan. That's his name, right? Not
Well,
Lance.
so
I
yeah,
wanna
his name is Ethan
Early.
Rom, which is an anagram for other man.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
so cool. I never even thought of that.
Lost,
I like it.
without getting again into too much, Lost loves anagrams.
It
I will just say that they
does.
love anagrams.
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay. Now you catch me tonight writing all the names down and like looking at them backwards and stuff. It's gonna be so- Yes. So Ethan, as we saw, was not as a part of like the law. What the manifest? Is that what they call it?
Yeah. The manifest. Yeah.
He wasn't a part of the manifest. Strangely enough, like why I have to say I'm so annoyed at Jack in the beginning of this episode being like, oh, now I'm going to be concerned that Claire went to the beach because now there actually is a danger that was confirmed because I didn't listen to her and I didn't believe her to begin with. Last week's episode, I went on a whole like men ain't shit kind of tirade about every single guy trying to like control Claire and not believing her and invalidating her and such. And now it's like the moment that there's like a hint of danger. Like if she wanted to go to the beach and you're the reason why she wanted to go, then make sure she gets there safely. And I know that Charlie went after her and such, but I'm sorry. If you're the reason why, just tell her, I'm going to make sure that you're safe. I know that you can handle it yourself. I know that that's diminishing her like worth and value and that kind of thing. Don't have to walk with her, but just have her in your sight. And so I'm a little upset there. There's that portion. Secondly, so we know that, so they've been, Charlie and Claire have been kidnapped. I don't know how that the two of them were both taken by.
Right, but that's what they say in the episode, right? Of like, how did this happen? And Locke says, not how, Jack, why?
Yeah.
It's a very interesting thing, which I think further proves that, like, I don't think that Ethan is just like a normal, regular other person who's like has a weird agenda. I think it's that he and these others that have like these whispers and such either have some kind of like powers or something, or are in this like in between. I've been calling this island as kind of like a waiting place, like a purgatory where things seem to like come to life and like die and like there's a questioning kind of place, right? And I think that the others are what have like from what we have heard, like maybe have infected real people to like have them join the dead that like rule the island. I don't know. There's something like that. And so I think that maybe when you're infected, it's not that you just act differently, like what I thought might be the case, because they said to watch, I think it was Rousseau said to watch who you know carefully.
Yeah.
I think it's maybe not that they're just acting differently, but that they could do things differently now that I've watched this episode. So maybe it's that those that are infected can actually make it, because obviously he also like Ethan just shows up when it starts raining and Jack is trying to climb up there. So like without warning, just shows up. And so I think that there's some kind of like being able to transport places quickly, kind of appear, reappear, something like that. He also is keenly aware that they're following him, but like, how can he know that they're following him and them not see them? Like, I think there's a whole thing there. Clearly, Charlie has also gone through it because at the end of the episode, he can't really talk that much. And when he does, he is like almost in like a trance. So there's some kind of powers at work there. That's all I'm saying.
Is that why Ethan's such a good fighter? I mean, he whoops the shit out of Jack.
Shit out of Jack. And you know what?
Him up.
Jack, honey, I do think that Locke has some kind of weird insight on the island because of like when he looked in like what the second episode.
He knows when it's raining.
Yeah, he knows when it's going to rain. He knows what you have to give to the island in order to like receive what you want, like those kind of things. Like I kind of see him as like the island whisperer. And I've actually theorized that he's like not an other, but might be infected or something like that.
Okay.
So like maybe he's one of the weird things. I also think he's the one that knocked out Saeed because now he's on this island where he can use his legs again. And he's like filling his dream of what he wanted. And he doesn't want to get off the island. He wants to like be able to continue to like live this out, and he now knows like he says like he's seen inside the island basically.
Yeah, he looked into the eye of the island and what he saw was beautiful.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yep.
So what I was going to say to that though is that like he's exactly what you expect at this very beginning. He's not how, why, and it's because like he's trying to theorize what like these other people, or maybe he knows why they've taken Claire and such.
This is a big Jack and Locke episode that, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I feel like besides White Rabbit, which is when Locke sits Jack down and is like, you're going to have to be the leader, we haven't really seen a huge interaction between these two men at this portion of time. So this is pretty significant, right? We start to see them especially butt heads, and we see that now, to your point, Beth, as Locke is communing with the island, that might mean he's not going to be as respectful of Jack's leadership. You know, like, oh, you can look over the people, but I really know what's going on here.
I also think that Locke is incredibly manipulative. And so...
Very fair.
So what we saw, and this is why I theorized that Locke is the one that actually knocked out Saeed when Saeed was almost getting the signal. He makes a pretty heavy case. Oh, it's pretty easy to set off a timer explosion. It's got to be Sawyer who did it to you, like all that kind of stuff afterwards. When he's like, who's somebody who has a good hold in this island and doesn't really want to leave? Like everything that's really him, like all of a sudden he pins on Sawyer. So there's that. And I also think that he knew, I think, what Boone would do, what Jack would do, and maybe what Kate would do. And I think he said all the things he wanted them to do in order for them to like seem like they came to their own conclusion. Like, we're going to go this way. Well, we really should stick together, Jack. Like, he knew that Jack would never leave. So do the things that make Jack seem like I'm making this decision and going forward. But maybe he's kind of playing both sides here.
I do want to point out something about that point. There are three or four specific moments within this episode where Locke poses a choice and respects people's choices. And I'm curious what your thought about that is, because what we're seeing is that like we're seeing like difference in leadership. With Jack, he does not give you a choice. He's going to do whatever the fuck he wants to do. But
right, because he says like, I know best, which as we find out in this episode, very much comes from his father's own mentality.
Yes.
Listen, I'm making this decision for you because I know what's best for you.
Yeah, and then with Locke, he would say like, I don't think you should do this. But then the minute someone would say something, he just allowed that to happen. He didn't fight them on it. He was just like, okay, if you know what's best for you. And we're seeing this like division of like they're like heads are butting. So I'm curious, like with what you said, what your thoughts are on the specific Jack and Locke interaction, because we are kind of seeing the development of their characters in like two completely different ways.
So here's the other thing too. Back with White Rabbit, I also theorized that because Jack was obviously chasing after the vision, the ghost of his father, whatever it was through the forest, and then who's the one that saves him? Locke. I feel like that was, for me, it seemed like a pretty heavy-handed clue that like Locke is kind of going to be this father figure for Jack, right? So or like maybe he's taking on, or like, I don't know. It's just, there's so many theories I can like put together in one aspect where I'm like, he's the father, but he's the father figure, but maybe his father is actually merged with him because he saw inside the island, and the father's, I don't know. Like there's all this other stuff there. But I do think that there's something to be said about, I think that he knows, I think it's manipulation at the end of the day, that he's like, oh yeah, I'm going to empower you to make these decisions yourself. And you know, whatever you do, you know best. But I also think he already knows what the outcomes are going to be. So like make them feel like they're going to make a difference and do the things that they want, but you're actually setting them up for what you know is going to happen to them, if that makes sense.
So then to that point, I don't want to jump straight to the ending, but do you feel like Locke knew he was going to find whatever that was?
I think that's what he was really looking for. I think that he was looking for whatever that is. I think that he, again, if he saw inside the eye of the island, he knows things about the island that nobody else does. And he must know that there's certain elements here that are things that he's looking for. The track was dead for hours, Boone said. He kept trying to get Boone to leave at first, but respected that he wanted to go. And then the second that Boone wants to turn around when they are very far away from the camp by himself in the woods when it's rained at night, and he's just like, yeah, go for it. All right, if you want it, if you think that's best. I was like, okay, that's not a sane person's like response to that. Unless you know that you're close to something and you don't want somebody else to see at first. And then like, I think obviously there's like a FUD because the flashlight falls. And so I think he's just kind of like, all right, well, Boone trusts me. So we'll go.
I mean, he did come clean about, because I don't think he's told anyone else up to this point, right, about where he actually came from with the box factory. He was trying to present himself as like Mr. Locke, mystery hunter, but now he's just coming clean of like, I mean, he hasn't said anything about the wheelchair yet, but he's like, I came from, basically entry level job out of nowhere in California. He was
basically Dwight Schrute.
Yeah. So I don't think I sort of, but I think he's Dwight Schrute without the like the suck uppiness and like the desire to get into a higher place. Like he still had like, I think the John Locke specifically in Walkabout, the flashback we see is very much like Dwight when in The Office, when that one storyline where he like really got into Second Life, like he wanted to create a life for himself. That was John Locke for obvious reasons. Like he wanted to find an escape, but it was less so about him sucking up to his bad boss Randy Nations, and more so about like, well, let me find a way I can get away from the droll aspects of my everyday.
But this idea that they fancy themselves these survival experts and that they know these things, the world and such, very similar. Just putting that out there. But yeah, I definitely think that Locke is just for me, like, I think I was saying this last week, there were virtually no characters I'm rooting for in the show. And that's
sort of the point. Yeah.
I was going to say, they're all kind of written to be very gray.
Yeah. Oh, especially very flawed, because especially when you talk about their pre-island stuff, it's like, what complicated things did they get involved in? I would say maybe the most rootable character at this moment is maybe someone like Sun, who like comes from a really shitty place and like just happens to find herself in a bad situation out of the frying pan.
I'm rooting for Sun. Yeah. I'm rooting for Claire. I'm rooting for Walt and the dog. Like those are I don't our first episode, because obviously what's the dog's name again? I'm sorry.
Vincent.
We see Vincent with Jack as Jack like comes to in the very first scene of the show, and I was like, what if the dog is the monster that's making that weird sound? Like that was my theory, that he was just like and I kind of like it.
I mean, Vincent comes and goes randomly, so like we haven't seen Vincent and heard that monster in the same place. But yeah, I mean, because that's the thing though, is that I think the show initially presents some I think Hurley might be another one who's like doesn't really have anything horrible been about him so far, but they very much
he's just a little racist, and that was about.
That was about it, but not as racist again as someone like Sawyer. Right? This was a pretty interesting Sawyer episode too, though, right? Like if I remember correctly, he has that scene with Walt where Walt's like, "Why would anyone go by a different name?" But he's like, "I don't know."
That was iconic. I died laughing. I was like, you just read it for film and you don't even know it, Walt. Yes.
But I loved that scene between him and Saeed, because what a difference a few episodes makes, right? Where Saeed was torturing him, and now Sawyer's here being like, shoes on the other foot now.
But it's also, what's interesting about that was like Sawyer was so begging to be hurt, and now he's angry about it. And I was like, you don't really get to have it both ways here. I'm not saying that what Saeed did to you is at all excusable, but you also knew you were going to get tortured, and then you ended the torture by like coercing a woman to kiss you. Like, I mean, you don't get to be right in this situation. You also don't get to have like both sides of it were like, I'm mad at you for torturing me, even though I basically said torture me and go for it. Like, come on, Sawyer.
Mm-hmm. I also thought it was really interesting how the role that Sawyer plays in this episode isn't as it's like if you think about it from beginning to end, Sawyer doesn't really play that big of a role, but it's interesting because we're seeing some character development from him in terms of, like you said, how he treats Saeed, but also he seems interested in what Saeed has to say specifically about the French woman, about the whispers. He seems like very intrigued by this. And he's
well, because there's an element of him, because he tells Saeed, I kept your signal fire burning, which I always found was such an interesting line. Like, is he still in this phase that as Hurley tells him, like, dude, you need the points? To your point, Dylan, is he like genuinely, because he also, remember, he was on Team Bottle Rocket during the whole cave-in situation, which everyone was probably surprised about. So like, again, there's a lot of frustrating multitudes in the Sawyer character, to your point, Beth, where like so hypocritical, where he tries to come across like he's smarmy and doesn't give a shit and is above it all, but like he is still actively invested in these rescue efforts. And so it makes him like a really incredibly frustrating but confounding character at that.
And it, you know, the fact that we always see him reading, to me, also ties into this like maybe sense of adventure and mystery that like he like probably likes. I actually theorized before I kind of learned a little bit more about who he was before the Sawyer episode a couple episodes ago. I kind of felt like he was a writer or had some kind, like I thought he had that aesthetic to him or like that feel. I think there's something to be said about, he obviously likes control. He took ownership of basically all the stuff and like doles it out and all that kind of stuff. So he likes control in that way, but not in a leadership way. Not the way that Jack has been put into, or that Locke kind of sees a little bit, or Saeed, even Kate to a certain extent. Michael definitely wants to be a leader in some capacity. Like, really wants to be a leader.
I mean, this episode is like, I mean, Michael, this episode was like, why am I always on the B team? Right? Yeah. Like, why doesn't anyone help me do something? And so Locke puts his money where his mouth is. Like, okay, Michael, yeah, you go lead an expedition now. You lead a search party. And it's like,
but also like, Michael, you like literally are the architect here. You're like the reason why people were able to get through the caved in situation. Like, you have led things. You are valuable. Cut it out.
What I found really interesting to that same point is, while they kind of sideline Michael, the same point could be made about Jack, because Locke makes a very good point about how you are the only physician we have. Why are you making these reckless decisions of like running out into the woods trying to find Claire, when like if you die, we're fucked. We don't have a doctor. Yeah. So like same with Michael, like you're our only architect. Why would you risk your life when we need someone who knows how to build things? Like
it's because that's the types of people they are. Like they're not the ones
that's exactly it. And that's what my theory is here, is that he knows things about people, either because he's really good at people reading, or the island has told him things about each person. That's what I think. He knew that Charlie was a drug addict. It could have been because maybe Charlie was a little bit more obvious with his actions, or did the island tell him? He knows, he kind of seems to know what kind of gets people going. And that's why I think it leads into the manipulation portion. He can get them to do what he either needs them to do or wants them to do in order, because he knows something about them. That's what I think is a part of this.
No, I mean, I think it's fine to say, Beth, that like you were frustrated by Jack in this episode, because I think, again, that's the point. I mean, that's what Kate has vocalized this entire time of like, stop. What are you doing out here? But as we saw from the very first Jack flashback scene of him getting his ass whooped as a kid, and he just kept getting back up and up again, like that's just not who Jack Shephard is, especially when you got a dad who tells you from a young age you just don't have what it takes. You're looking to prove him wrong in every single regard.
So I also wanted to talk about the flashback that was in this episode, because so up until this point, Jack has not been one of my favorite characters, but this flashback shows so much character depth to him that I I'm curious your thoughts, Beth, on this journey of him basically turning in his father.
Yes, I'm going to sneeze. Only one this time. So there we go. Normally I sneeze many times. So that was incredible. This is interesting. So last time we see Jack's flashbacks, we see him as being the complete opposite of his father, right? Somebody who is more worried about doing the right thing than doing the smart thing, if that makes sense. And his father's more about doing the smart thing than necessarily the right thing. That's kind of how I equated it in the past. We started to kind of see that Jack is turning more into his father. He's a successful surgeon now. But there's still this huge friction between the two of them. It comes to light that Jack has replaced his father in a surgery after a nurse felt like his father wasn't sober in the middle of the surgery and maybe was putting the patient at risk and actually cut one of her arteries and was shaking. Yes, thank you. And that he cut one of her arteries. So Jack comes in and instead of, I don't even think that he was really performing the surgery that needed to be done. I think he was trying to fix what his father did. And she flatlined.
Yeah. And that's what, Christian initially blames him for, like, don't blame yourself for it. But then is also like, why did you do that? I had that handled when he very clearly didn't.
Yeah.
But we also learned in the first flashback that Christian has kind of a weird relationship with when patients pass away, like in the surgery room. He's just like, if I had to worry about it, basically is like what he said, then I would never sleep and I would never have a good relationship with you or your mother or anybody. It would just eat at me all the time. And he's saying all that while he's drinking. And I'm like, well, clearly you're not handling it because you're drinking after a child died on your table, as you just said. So it's a very interesting dynamic where I think that Jack's vulnerability and empathy for other people is what helps him in those tough situations where his father has tried to beat that out of him and doesn't see that that is actually what has literally driven him to not be good at his job, if that makes sense, because now he's coping with alcohol. So in the flashback sequence, they write up the report, or his father really writes up the report, Christian does, that says, basically the injuries from I think it was a car accident, were so severe that there wasn't really anything that we can do. And we tried, and that was that. And Jack has a huge issue with signing off on that because he's like, well, that's not what happened. You messed up and I had to step in. And Christian really manipulates and coerces him to say
oh yeah,
I would lose my license. This isn't just about my job. This is my life. And I have pushed you and to the point where we've kind of had ruined our relationship because you are the best surgeon. I've driven you to that point and you're the best youngest surgeon that there is in this area. And basically says all the things that I think Jack needed to hear. And then Jack decides to sign the form and kind of goes along with it. He then sees his father consoling the husband of the woman who passes away during surgery. And I don't know if it's a medical assistant or a nurse, tells Jack, oh yeah, that the husband's considering suing the hospital. And he sees his father console the husband in a similar manner of how he just consoled Jack. And he's there's a glimmer of, oh, this is how my dad manipulates people. And then when they're in this hearing, essentially, his father admits that he knew that the woman was pregnant, which clearly Jack did not know that the woman that they operated on was pregnant. And that sets him over the edge. And Jack retracts everything and changes his statement and does out his father, which puts into to light a lot more of why his mother was very mad at him in the first flashback.
Right. She tells him that you ruined his life. And that goes back to Christian's statement, right? Of it's not my career, it's my life. It makes sense that this terrible mother, all the best Cowboys have mommy and daddy issues, would be you ruined his life. Remember, that was his career and you decided to throw him under the bus.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just to say, and you'll notice that going forward, Lost does this a lot because this is the first episode where we've had character have another flashback centric
Yes.
episode. You're going to
Yeah.
see that going forward, where certain flashbacks are like puzzle pieces, and they might answer questions that you might have had about another character's. Like they do that
a lot of season 1 flashbacks are going to be immediately right before coming to the island. Like you saw that in Kate's episode, right? Like what led to her coming to the island. Obviously, with more flashback episodes, you can't just spend time in that time period. So you're going to get a lot more of like, we're moving backwards through the timeline. And we got it here where, I mean, we knew nothing about Jack's dad up until this point. The entire flashback of White Rabbit was him finding his dead father. And now we got to see who he was. And I mean, to your point, Beth, it's this idea that Christian feels like in order to be a good doctor, you have to like let things go and not be emotionally invested. But to your point, empathy is sort of Jack's superpower. Right, like it allows him to be so good in this crisis situation on the island, is because, at least for the most part, he's able to understand and sympathize and relate to people, as opposed to Christian Shepherd, who feels like, no, the best way to lead people is to do it almost like with the stick rather than the carrot.
Yeah. And I also think that I do think that Christian does have empathy, but instead of embracing it and using it as a superpower like Jack does, he suppresses it, and that's to his disadvantage. And that's what really makes him slip up. That's what really gets him to look more at the bottle than anything else, you know? So I think that from what I'm seeing, that would, if I were any kind of therapist, which I'm not. I took 2 counseling classes in my master's degree, so very much not there. That's where I would kind of probably theorize with him. But it's important, I think, again, that I do think that the reason why we're seeing all of this mirroring of Jack's father in this story is not just through Jack's actions in this episode, but again, relating back to this Jack and Locke relationship. I really see symbolism there, in that his father always told him, this is what you have to do. And there we see Jack living up like his father and saying, no, this is what you have to do. This is what I have to do. And Locke playing the other side of the coin, which is make your own decisions, that kind of thing. Again, I do think it's manipulative, but so is Christian. So I think it's a really interesting dynamic to kind of compare, contrast these two potential like father figure. Locke's a potential one. I just lost another thought I had about that too. Dang.
Oh, it's fine. I'll try to jumpstart you with another question then.
Okay.
So we obviously saw Michael have this B plot, or not B plot,
like a CD plot, yeah.
D plot.
Yeah, where he was kind of cast out and had to make his own group to go head south. And we've seen this interaction between him and Walt, where he's not like the best father to Walt, where he's like has moments where he shines and then has moments where he's like obviously not very good at being a father. And it's revealed that or not to us, but to someone else on the island, he reveals to Hurley that his real father.
We had the name Brian invoked.
Yeah. So obviously Michael's gay, and no, I'm kidding. Like she's got 2 dads.
Yeah, it makes sense when Michael landed on the island with a T-shirt that says "blah blah blah penis" on it, and he had to like take it off because it was covered in blood.
Rainbow sequin. Yeah. So that I actually had. I couldn't remember when I was thinking about this. Didn't he say his other father? He didn't say my real father.
I think he said my real father, if I recall correctly.
Oh, he said my real father. Okay. That changed.
And that's why.
Okay.
It was like
because when he said because he said like, oh, my dad plays backgammon with me. Like, oh, you mean Michael? No, my real dad, Brian.
Yeah, because I think if he would have said other father, then Hurley probably would have actually thought Michael was gay and been like, "Oh, you have 2 dads." But no, I like he purposely.
Well, because I think that it relates more to this is a who's a dad, who's a father situation in my head, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
a father is somebody who fathers a child. His dad is somebody who gets really that close connection, right? So this Michael is not close with him. He barely knows his son. So that tells me that maybe he's biologically the father, but like Walt's dad is the one that probably his mother was with when they were in
Yeah.
Australia.
I mean, yeah, I don't know if you like Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 has that line, right?
Oh,
like
yeah.
that might have been your father, but he ain't your daddy.
Your daddy.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, that's
It's
exactly what it
daddy.
was.
oh no. Oh yeah, I love that one. That's like I think about that a lot actually. Happy Father's Day coming up, by the way. It should be called Happy Daddy's Day.
Happy
Ooh.
Daddy.
In Pride
Daddy
Month.
Day.
Oh, Happy
Oh my
Daddy's
God.
Day.
All the
But
yeah.
no,
all the
no.
best. All the best daddies. Like,
All the best daddies.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do think that that's really interesting. I'm interested. I actually theorized when what we always like to say, okay, this is what the next episode's centered character is for both the Nanny and for Lost. This episode, when Dylan said, "Here's the title. Who do you think it's about?" I said Michael. Because I really thought this would be, let's learn a little bit, but they've been setting up a lot of this father-son disconnect for a few episodes now. And that Michael doesn't really think about Walt unless it's like Walt is asking to do something, which
Exactly.
case he's like,
Unless it's Michael disallowing Walt from doing something. But I mean, you
Exactly.
spoke about this with Locke, with Walt, or with Jack. Sorry, that's where Locke comes in too, right? Because now once again, Locke is stepping in as this paternal figure for someone of like, well, let me teach you how to play backgammon and throw a knife. And so, like, again, it's this weird situation where maybe Walt now has 3 daddies.
Yeah.
Oof.
Ooh.
Some people pay good money for that.
Daddies, too many daddies. So I'm just going to Violet Chachki's Too Many Daddies routine in the finale when she was doing the
Oh my God.
the burlesque number.
So
No? Okay, great.
I also want to say, we were talking about Father's Day gifts. Walt's going to have a great Father's Day gift because Hurley owes him a good $20,000 after losing those backgammon games.
You owe me 20,000. You'll get it. I loved that. That was a nice like little moment there.
It's a really fun interaction because like Walt is a kid, and I think Hurley of the main cast is probably the most kid-like. Like he very much seems in like that Arrested Development situation where he's it's calling everyone dude, and he just seems to have this like very easy, carefree attitude, except when it comes to his dietary restrictions. That it seems like the two of them would naturally get along. It seems like Hurley would also be the most likely, besides Locke, to listen to Walt as well. I want to ask you about Boone, Beth, because Boone is such an interesting, if we're talking about guys who again put me in, coach. We saw that from the very first moment with Boone.
Yes.
So, you have a pen. Here's a bunch of pens. And Boone does this here again, where he like insists that he goes out with Locke. What have you been thinking about the work of Mr. Summeralder so far on Lost?
So Boone is an interesting character. I hate Shannon. Like I hate Shannon more so than any other character on the show. Like to the point where I was like, why didn't they take Shannon and nobody chase after her? It'd be fine. Nobody would care. Anyway, but I am interested a little bit more. We learn a little bit more in this episode that he runs a part of his mother's.
I
like,
run a
wedding
business.
Yeah, I run a business, but it's like his mother's like wedding emporium business. So he like runs a part of it. And like, I like begrudgingly now wonder how Shannon fits into it. I'm like, oh, now I guess I am wondering about her. And I guess it would be nice to have some more background information, I guess, like whatever.
She did show in the caves that she did care, like that Boone. Like she showed the, before she seemed kind of like meh about like her relationship with Boone, but in the caves when it comes to terms that like they haven't come back yet, Shannon looks like visibly concerned.
Shannon clearly cares about her brother.
Yeah.
And I mean, he clearly cares about her and such.
Exactly. We saw that with the asthma episode, right? That
Right.
like he was there for her and he knew her in a situation where nobody else really did. So it's clear that like I think she relies on him as much as she pushes him away and makes fun of him and everything. I think there's a part of him that's like, oh, if he was gone, I don't know what I would do.
Totally.
Do we know? Shannon strikes me as an older sister. Do we know if she's younger or older?
They haven't revealed yet.
Because I feel like she comes across as like my annoying little brother, blah, 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 but then also as like, oh, but I need you. Like when she was having her asthma attack, which is like, I'm not coming down on her for this only. I also would want the comfort of like my brother if I was like, felt like I was dying, like, of course. But you could see that it went beyond like, oh, I feel like I'm dying. I want my family here. It was like, I specifically want Boone. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's clearly a close connection, and they were traveling together for some reason. So clearly they're close in some capacity. Going back to Boone though, I think that just that little clue that he runs a business, but he really doesn't run a business. He runs a part of a business, shows that like he really wants to do well. And this also kind of ties right back in. If Shannon's an older sibling, it could be that he's like, feels like the youngest who hasn't gotten his opportunity yet to like really shine. So any opportunity he can to try to play hero, to try to be a leader, to do something productive and helpful, he keeps trying to do it, and oftentimes either screws it up or is not the one who ends up with the glory. So that tells me that he's probably like neglected in some other capacity, or he's always made to feel small,
compensating for something. Yeah.
I definitely think that in this situation. Of course, Kate and Jack go off together. Like, of course they go. I'm also like so not here for that relationship.
I have another question about that after you're done.
Oh yeah. We have to talk about that, of course. But I do like. Again, I think that Locke plays the father character for Boone in this episode. Like, I really think that Locke is becoming like the leader in the sense that he is the father of pretty much everybody. Like on this island,
he's not the leader so much as like someone that everyone can look to, you know, which is like almost like a leader in that capacity, but not with the formal title "live together, die alone." This is more so like, if I have something, I'm going to talk to Locke about it.
Yeah, he's the elder. He's like the village elder. You know, like you go talk to this person, but they're not the ones necessarily telling you like decreeing what's happening, essentially. But yeah, so Kate and Jack though.
Yeah, I'm curious your thoughts, because I felt this was really interesting, especially the moment where Jack is grilling Kate about why she knows how to track. And he's like, we're learning new things about you all the time. Is this because you were
like
an outlaw?
Seconds after she asks him about his background and he shuts her down. So like, shut the fuck up, Jack, and like slap you across the face.
Yeah.
But you know what? Good on her. Like I've been complaining, Mike, that I really don't like how the writers write Kate. She is always like basically a puppet for the men. Like I really don't like that when her background seems to be like she's an independent badass, and I'm like, where's that? I want to see that.
I think that is incredibly valid. I think Kate is a character who even early on they had trouble sort of figuring out, because listen, I'll sort of put cards on the table here. There was a draft of Lost where Jack was not the leader. Jack gets killed in the pilot and Kate takes over. And I think once they did not go down that path, once that trail went cold as it did, they struggled to really figure out, what do we do with her now? And I think as a result, she has sort of been, you know, shoved into certain romantic relationships, as well as just sort of like, in this case, serving as a source of Jack's rage, where he takes out his frustration on her while also compounding everything we learned from her episode of like, he knows, he's seen the mugshot, he knows that she's wanted for something.
And here's the other thing too, is like, I don't think this is Evangeline Lilly's problem. I think it's the director's problem. I think it's the writer's problem.
Yeah.
But I am sick of every shot of her is just her looking like,
No, Evangeline Lilly is great. And I think look no further than that Charlie scene, which I would love to get your thoughts on. Like Evangeline Lilly like sobbing as she's holding his hand, and then like also crying tears of joy. Like she is arguably like the biggest power performance of that
I'm
scene.
actually happy you brought this up. This is why I wanted to say, if Jack is such a good doctor, how come he doesn't know how to do chest compressions literally at all? It started off in the first scene. I don't know if Dylan saw this or not, but when we were watching, I was going like this constantly because that woman flatlines. He's not on her chest. He's in her abdomen. And he's like, get the crash cart. You do chest compressions. If there's a flat line, you do chest compressions until a cart comes over. Chest compressions, chest compressions, chest compressions. I got this from Dr. Mike. I know what I'm talking about. So there's that. Then it's like, first of all, when Charlie is hung, she's like, I can't breathe. Why does it take him 5 minutes to go, oh yeah, let me move the body this way so it's a little closer? Like, come on, think. Secondly, then he's like down there and he's like not doing chest compressions the way you're supposed to at all when he's doing it. And like, no wonder the heart isn't starting. And he's like trying to breathe into him first. No, you tell her to breathe and you do the chest compressions. Come on. I am not a medical professional. Get with it, Jack. So there's that. But yeah, going back to Evangeline Lilly's acting in this, I really do. Like, I agree. I think that there's just an issue here. Like that scene alone is the most intense emotion besides the end of Walkabout that we've had in Lost, right? The music is swelled up. We see Jack is like, it's like the reverse where we're used to Jack being the one beat up and he's like literally just kind of like beating Charlie back to life. Like, yeah,
and he is, I mean, it's also interesting in that like you wonder how much of that is him just like taking out his frustration. Does he really think that it's over? Is this like a last ditch effort? It ends up working, but like, man,
but I don't think it's him. I think it's the island that brought him back.
Okay,
like,
interesting.
I don't think, because I've said this multiple times, Claire's baby stopped kicking. All of a sudden she gets sustenance from the island and like, and the baby kicks again. I'm like, okay, so the island brought him back. Got you. I think the baby is like an other essentially, but without even being born yet, which is why Ethan is after her baby essentially. Like, I think that that's part of it. I think that Charlie did die. Cause like, how could you not die in that situation?
I know, like, I don't know how long after they found him, but yeah, dude was hung from a tree.
Yeah.
You don't really recover from that.
And also Jack at the very end, just kind of like gently touching his neck and being like, does this hurt? He was hung. Presumably his neck is broken. Yeah. I bet it hurts, Jack. Like, but like the other thing is like, we are aware that like injuries and such are really weird.
I was going to bring that up. I was going to say, like, I'll play a devil's advocate here. In our terms, he would be dead, but like, as we've seen on the island, things heal very quickly. As you pointed out in like previous episodes, Beth, like, who's to say that maybe he couldn't be resuscitated in this instance? Right. But you never know because like, nothing's been answered yet.
I mean, so let me ask, because as you mentioned, I think this is probably like, I agree Walkabout was a very emotionally intense scene, but this is probably the most like, I don't know, like gutting scene since the very first scene of the pilot when Jack walks out on the beach. I mean, in the moment, what was your reaction? Were you, because I know you're not a Charlie fan, but what did you feel seeing him hanging from?
No, I obviously like, unless it's Shannon, I didn't want to see anybody hanging. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not that awful.
Damn.
I obviously would never want to see someone hung from a tree. Like, I actually, that is actually what I think is one of the worst ways to go. Like, it really freaks me out. I really hate that it's like, it's not like that you just are dead. It's like you are hung to be on display for other people to find you or see you. That's what I think is so awful about that. Ethan does warn Jack when he's beating the crap out of him, like, you keep following me, I'm going to kill one of them. That's the follow through on the promise. And that is a message to Jack more than it is about taking Charlie's life.
Yeah.
And that aspect of itself, which is your death is really a message for somebody else, I think is one of the darkest things. Cause like, maybe this is the Leo in me who likes to be the center of attention, but when I die, it should be about me. And not about
I
somebody
think that's a
else.
good bar to set. When I die, it should be about me.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, if
I
I
get
die
that,
as a
yeah.
message for somebody else, they're gonna be like, oh, you know, like if somebody killed me as a means to like send Dylan a message, I'm gonna be like in the afterlife, like, hey, what about me? What the fuck? Like, you know what I
I
mean?
can sing Johnny one note.
Yeah.
Hit me hard in the chest, and maybe I'll come back and go, ah. It's like, could you imagine if Charlie had done that? If he comes
I
back
love
to
it.
life, just gets punched that one time instead of going, he just like lets out that Johnny one note.
Yeah,
instead.
you all, everybody just starts like singing all of the Drive Shaft hits. I mean, it's an intense scene from like a cinematography angle as well.
Yes.
Like they have that really beautiful but haunting wide shot of the three of them just like silent in the rain before Charlie has that moment, and it's just like, and
Yeah.
spoiler alert, that song that you hear that plays during that scene is going to become a huge part of Lost. It's a song called Life and Death by the
Okay.
composer Michael Giacchino. And it's basically, you're going to hear it pop up basically in many scenes where either characters die, you know, maybe life is invoked in some way.
Oh.
But yeah, it's a familiar tune that you'll definitely get used to as you go through the series.
If there was ever a title song for Lost, you just heard it. It's that one. Like that is like the song people usually associate with Lost. There's a few others, but like when I think of music in Lost, it is that specific tune that they played during Charlie's hanging. I'm curious though, with this scene, while you were watching it, what were the thoughts going through your head as you were seeing Charlie potentially die? Like, because in the last episode, you had mentioned, I don't understand why Charlie is such a popular character.
Yeah.
And I said, well, you'll see eventually. Like, you might not like him now, you might not like him later. And then you come into this episode and you're like, oh shit, is he dead?
Yeah.
Well, I just want to know like your thoughts, like after last episode, me telling you, oh yeah, he'll be better later. And then you're like, well, he's dead. So
Okay. So
you're like
well, here's the thing. I also like am fully aware that this is a show about flashbacks and such. So I figured if he
Yeah.
died, we'd see some aspects of
Totally.
like I didn't think that like if someone dies, it's the end.
Removed from the show, the trap door opens up and like, yep, you're never appearing on Lost again.
And they just go into the void. Like I don't think of that's not the
Okay,
vibe this show gives me. That it's like their contract was up. Bye. You know, whatever. It's an interesting thing. I don't think like Charlie's like I still don't get the like Charlie fandom idea.
Yeah.
But obviously I feel bad. Like he, for all of his misguidance and, you know, negative traits and the things that I really don't like him for, nobody deserves to be kidnapped and then hung while you're trying to defend a person you clearly care about. Like that's awful. So obviously that like pulls on the heartstrings, and like that's the only thing he can really focus on when he's kind of like almost like in that trance like stare at the end, is like he did not protect who he wanted to protect. And he says that they're after her, or they're after, they only wanted her, which begs the question, why did Ethan even kidnap Charlie? If he's such a good fighter and stuff, why not just knock out Charlie and just focus on Claire?
Yeah, I mean, could have just been a loose end in the moment of Ethan being like, well, I can't leave him be. But I agree that like there is, I think, a part of Ethan that could have easily killed Charlie right there, right then. But maybe just spur of the moment, like, well, I guess I better take them both. But yeah,
just in case Jack follows me, I can kill one of them and slow down their path. Like, I mean, like, who thinks that far in advance?
Ethan might. I don't know. Again, this is a guy who like went from 0 to 60 in the course of 2 episodes of just becoming like a dark man.
And to be fair, I'm literally the person who said what half an hour ago that Locke can like see what people's destinies are. So like, I guess I should reel back. Like, oh, who doesn't think about that? Because maybe Ethan has similar powers or something. I don't know.
So to go back to Locke, with the discovery of this metallic thing, what do you think it is? What are your theories? Like, Hit me with them.
So this is the one thing I think I know what it is. So
Okay.
the only thing that I am spoiled on for the entirety of Lost is I know that there is a hatch of some sort. So I think this might be the hatch.
Okay.
But I don't know what the hatch is or what it does or where it leads or anything like that. I
Yeah.
just know the word hatch. So I'm
I-
assuming this is the introduction to the hatch.
I mean, I'm glad because I was gonna say like, oh, down the hatch, and I was wondering, you know, I was
Yeah.
hoping
Yeah.
that it wasn't like any sort of like you're like, well, what does that mean? Does that
No.
spoil anything?
No, and here's the reason why I know this, because I watched the beginning of the Emmys from like 2004 or
yeah,
5 or
Conan,
6.
I
or
know
something.
exactly what you're thinking.
Conan O'Brien one.
Where he
Where he's
falls
with
out of
Hurley.
he's with Hurley. He comes out of the hatch and he says, "Oh, we
He's in
weren't
the
nominated
office.
that year." Then he falls
Yep.
out of the rafters in the office. I'm thinking, I exactly know what you're talking about.
So I knew that there was a hatch because he goes, "Oh, look, right here." And Hurley goes, "I wouldn't go in there, dude." And because I've watched that so much because I thought it was so funny. I watched all those shows for the exception of Lost, which is what they kick it off with. So I watched 24 and House and The Office and like all those different shows, like Family Guy, I think they had at one point or something like that. I watched all of those different shows, or it was South Park. That's what it was. Because he was in the closet with
Oh yeah, with Tom
R. Kelly.
Cruise.
Oh yeah.
Well, with Tom Cruise and R. Kelly. Yeah. But oh my God, it was. So I know that's the only thing I know from the show. So that's what I think it is. I don't know anything about the hatch though. That's all I know.
What do you theorize though? What do you think it could be?
Well, I think that Locke is trying to figure out like he's seen the eye of the island and it's beautiful, right?
Mhm.
So maybe he's trying to learn a little bit more about the island's origins or the other people who are here or the secrets of this place. And I feel like it's in there. I've also, Mike, had a couple of other theories that are not necessarily theories, but like correlations I'll bring in.
Okay.
One
Lay 'em on
of which is like this idea of like the Hunger Games, where people are brought to like an arena that is like the elements are controlled and all those different things are controlled by people on the outside, right?
Yeah, like Cabin in the Woods.
Yeah. that's a good one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I also have a theory that is similar to Bird Box, which is like people who have been like touched by the island but don't die. So if this is a waiting place, then if you die, then it's like your judgment is coming. And then you either like in like a purgatory sense, it's like either you ascend to heaven or you descend to hell, like one of those things, right? So like once you die, like that's it kind of thing. But if you are brought back, then it's like you still have something that you have to work through in order to like go either direction or something. So with Bird Box, did you see Bird Box?
I am not, but I know of the concept.
Okay. So there's this something that's in the sky or something that if you look at it, it makes you want to kill yourself and you like immediately, right? And there are people who see it and it's almost like they become like these insane prophets because they are like, have you seen it? It's glorious. You must look at it, kind of like fanatical thing. And they spend their entire time trying to get everybody to look at it so that they either die or they feel like they're part of like the chosen ones who know how beautiful it is. And there's really no rhyme or reason as to like, there's a lot of theories as to like, who are the people who like, what were their lives like beforehand? Were they people who had mental health issues or whatever the case is, right? Which I think is problematic, but regardless, I do think that there's maybe something to that. Like, is Locke like one of those kind of prophets for the I see how beautiful it is, I must figure it out. And is that the disease? Is that the sickness that makes people like turn? So that is kind of like goes along with all of those things. So maybe the hatch is kind of a secret to either the idea of like, I don't think that there is anybody that's like controlling the elements of the island, the Hunger Games style, but I could see how this could like tie into maybe some origins, some other people, other people's stories, that kind of thing.
That makes sense. I mean, it's obviously was there before them. It's such a game changer in that it is, I mean, it's metal, right? The only
Right.
metallic things we've encountered on the island so far was the plane that came here. And so,
exactly.
I mean, so this was the last episode to air for about a month. And you can understand, I think you can, this episode does have to me major like mid-season finale vibes.
Oh yeah.
Right, with like
absolutely.
character death fake out, big Jack episode. We get big stakes with like, now we know Claire's officially kidnapped. And we just like open things up with this last second surprise of, oh, there's something new that these two are going to be exploring.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the next thing that I want to do is, because we've been doing this lately, is I'm going to tell you the episode next week, like the title of next week's episode, and you guess who you think it's about.
Okay.
So the title is Whatever the Case May Be.
First of all, side note, I don't think this is what this episode's about. Where's Rose? Where's this woman? I want to know where she's at. I miss her.
Yeah, I love Rose. She's a great character. She's hanging out with the other 815ers. I call them the gawkers on the podcast because all they do is just stand and gawk at everything. Yeah. Like, I think it was invoked actually during White Rabbit when it was like only Jack, not Charlie. Only Jack swam out to save the woman. It's like all of you are just gawking, standing there, not helping anybody. So the gawkers, we officially coined them. I think Rose is gawking it up right now. She had her moment with Jack, right, where she's sort of like, hey, I'm holding out hope for my husband. Thank you for supporting me. And now she's just off doing her own thing at the moment.
Now she's just fine. She to me is one of the more intriguing people from those first couple episodes. So that's why I'm like, where is she? I think the next episode's about Boone and Shannon.
It's not. It's Kate.
Ooh, okay.
We're going to get our second character to have their second flashback episode.
Great.
Yeah, if it has not become prominent right now, the show really is hyping up Jack and Kate. Not even as a couple, but like as main characters in the series.
Fair enough. Yeah. So I would say overall my rating. Did you give your rating for the Nanny? You gave a 6, right?
I don't know if I did. I'm gonna, if I had to give that last episode of the Nanny a rating, I'd give it a 7 out of 10.
Okay, 7 out of 10.
Wow.
Mine is.
What would you give it, Mike?
Yeah.
Oh God. I mean, I don't have anything to compare it against, so I guess I give it like
a 10 out of 10. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I would say like a 5. Like it seemed like very solid comedy to me, but nothing next level. So I guess if I'm comparing it against every other sitcom episode I've ever seen, it's a 5.
That is fair.
Valid.
That's fair. I think for Lost, I would give this episode a 9 out of 10. I don't think it's 10 out of 10. I know a lot of people like this episode. I think there's so many elements to it. And
it's all about that CPR for Beth. She just got taken out because of it.
Yes. I really, so like last week's episode really invoked a lot of like negative emotions in me. And I liked it. I think I gave it like an 8 out of 10 or something like that. Yeah. I like this episode. Saeed's episode to me, like, I don't know why. It just like, that just excited me. This was like, really I'm here on the like ride, right? And so like, this is a 9 out of 10. Like it's not 100% perfection for me. But I really, really enjoyed this episode.
No. Solitary is always it's one of my favorites, definitely of season 1 at least. Like I think it's got so much going on for it. I think the introduction of Danielle Rousseau and this concept of the others is like such a big deal for the show. We had nobody except the people that we knew up until this point. I think the golf B plot is really, really, really great. I think it's such a fun B plot.
And then it also helps advance so many of the relationships. And like this episode is like, there's a lot of relationships that are being built. But they're mostly with like 1 or 2 characters, it's not like a myriad of relationships.
Yeah, this is not really an ensemble episode. I would say that episodes like Solitary is definitely more of an ensemble episode. Yeah. This one was really about like specific pairs of people, but not really. We got to check in with some people, but it wasn't like, oh wow, there's so much interesting stuff going on with each one of the 16 cast members on this show.
But I really, this was a great episode. I really liked it.
I think in terms of my favorite episodes of season 1, there's still one that hasn't come up yet that I really like called De Ex Machina. That one is a really good episode, but that's like later towards the end of season 1.
Yeah, there's 23 episodes if you're kind of there's a 3-part finale to season 1, which is my favorite episode, not only of the season but of the series. Yeah, so but yeah, Deus Ex Machina is I think episode 19, so it's like very much near that tail end. You just reached like the halfway point of the season.
Well, the fact that it's called Deus Ex Machina like makes me very excited because that is a theatrical term.
Alicia Vikander is going to come out as a robot to talk to John Locke.
Well before her prime in terms of acting, like work. No, so that's really great. If I had to give an MVP to this episode, I'm going to give it to Locke. I think that he's really the driving force behind everybody, even Jack, who's centered about it. We can connect the dots of him playing father figure with so many different characters in this episode. Boone, Jack, Michael, even to a certain extent. I think that there's just a really interesting, he's the one that I think brings the flavor of the episode. It's Locke. My LVP, I'm like so tempted to give it to Jack.
No, there's an easy choice here. There's an easy choice here, Beth.
I think I have to give it to Jack, even though he brings Charlie back to life. It's just like, dude, stop being your father. Stop feeling like you have to prove something to other people right now. I need you to think about the greater good for once in this context and not in the context that your father is pressed upon you. I need you to think about this. Everything that Locke is telling you is correct. Like, you should go back and tend to the other people. I guess in that situation, of course, Charlie would not have been found, but Charlie also wouldn't have died in the first place if you weren't following them. So there you go.
I thought you were going to pick Ethan as your LVP.
Oh, I thought you were going to pick Christian. I think that's far and away the LVP of the episode.
Good call.
Yeah, that's true. Christian, yeah.
100%.
So,
I changed course.
I'm looking at my notes, and so Josh and I, we do like 5 MVP points, 5 LVP points. Christian got 3 out of 5 LVP points for that episode between the two of us. Like, really terrible. Like, he kills someone
who's pregnant and lies about it when he's drunk. Yeah.
And manipulates his son to essentially cover for him, which he was going to do for a portion of time. So yeah, bad episode for Christian.
Yeah, no, you know what? Thank you for bringing, I try very hard to try to choose characters that are like on the island, but Christian, technically we have seen him on the island. So.
Exactly.
That's very true.
I mean, Dylan over here will choose one-time characters all the time for LVP. He'll be like, this one person who's never coming back.
But that's the fun thing about the show. Is in both of these shows, you have people like appear and disappear, and sometimes they make like such big impact in your viewing experience. You're like, I gotta memorialize them in some way.
To be fair, otherwise it would be like we have the same 5-6 people that we'd probably be choosing from all the time. So yeah, but I'm totally with you. I do think Christian is the LVP of this episode. 100%. Sure. Yeah.
Cool. So that was our recaps of Lost and the Nanny for this episode. A big extra special thank you to Mike for joining us this episode.
Yeah, the pleasure was all mine. Yes, got the fan. Blah blah blah. Penis. Listen, I got an excuse to watch a theater episode of The Nanny. That was great. I got the opportunity to talk with both of you and just be enraptured by Beth's thoughts on Lost.
I know, right?
Lost. I mean, I absolutely understand the like onus behind this podcast now. Lost is one of those shows that like it's just so much fun. It's not like, oh, you're in on the joke and you're watching people get it. It's like watching people sort of react and formulate their own ideas for the first time. I think that you made this point last week, Dylan. It takes you back to those days in like 04, 05, right? When you're like talking to whoever you were watching it with, being like, I think I know this is what's going on. It's always fun to watch someone explore Lost for the first time, especially someone like, especially Duffy over here. So the pleasure was all
Duffy
mine.
one note.
This is great. I love Lost season 1. I love Lost in general, but season 1 holds a special place in my heart. And to find Beth sort of, become awakened to a season that's so special to me is special in its own right.
Well, I'm so happy that first of all, I'm so happy. Oh my God, that is a huge spider. Why do I always get huge spiders when I'm streaming or podcasting or something? Huge spider. We'll take care of you in a second and put you outside. Anyway, Michael, thank you so much for joining us.
No, wait, are you sure that's not just Gracie dressed up as the spider?
Oh my God. Itsy bitsy spider. Woo! Everyone's just go crazy. But no, thank you so much, Mike. We're so thankful that we were able to get you as our first guest.
I know.
So exciting.
This is amazing. I'm happy to hopefully start a trend going on. There's a wide array. I know there's at least a wide array of Lost podcasters out there. I don't know about Nanny podcasters, actually.
There's a couple Nanny podcasts, but I think ours is a more unique concept. Normally it's people who actually are quite a bit older than me that are watching it because they were like Fran's parents' age or Fran's age or whatever at the time. So it's kind of interesting to hear their perspectives and such. But I'm excited the same way, like having Dylan, who is, a gay man. This is one of the shows that a lot of like millennials and like younger Gen Xers will say, like, this was a formative like show for my experience growing up and such. So it's just kind of fun to see it through a 2021 lens when I was thinking about it, like we are as far removed from when this show aired as the references they make about the 60s. So
I know.
It's interesting because not only do we get 90s references, we get 80s, 70s, 60s. So we're getting essentially 50 to 60 years worth of references all in one show that we may or may not get, but I think it's fun.
Yeah. So now when Cardi B comes on for the reboot, like, does she make references to like the 2000s, the 2010s?
I hope it's all about like talking about like Paris Hilton. Oh my God, you were on the move over there. Okay. Sorry.
Right,
this spider.
We'll wrap up for you, Beth. No, but thank you so much, Mike. Mike, where can they find you going forward?
They can find me at a Mike Bloom type on social media. I guess the current things that I'm doing, I'm just watching Beth's face to see how she, like, as she's slowly trying to track this spider like John Locke. Yeah. So I mentioned it at the tippy top here. Lost Down the Hatch is a podcast I do with Josh Wiggler. It is full spoiled, but we go in depth. We play sounds from the episode. We do MVPs. We do LVPs. It is a ridiculous amount of fun. If you are a huge Lost fan, check it out. We are currently in the beginning of a season 5, episode 5. It's been a wild ride so far that we're like not only nearing the end, but like we're going to finish within this year, which is wild to think about, but we're having a great time. I'm actually also on post show recaps. I'm doing actually something a little similar to what you both are doing. One series that I have never seen is the X-Files, which is my wife's favorite show. And so we have a podcast called The Bloom Files where we watch a couple of episodes of the X-Files and I give my thoughts and she gives her thoughts. It's very much what you were just saying, Beth, about like not only talking about it from like the series lens, but also like from a 2021 lens of like, how does it work from sci-fi now, especially this idea of like, now that pop culture is more about, do aliens exist? Does it hold up? Does it not? But that's been a lot of fun. And we're doing a bunch of stuff as well. There's a Patreon account for post-show recaps, and we offer so many benefits, including, and luckily I don't have to like spoil anything, Beth, because you have met Danielle Rousseau. In honor of her, if we get to 550 patrons by the end of June, I will attempt to learn the French language, which I know none of, in honor of Danielle Rousseau and her intrepid science exposition crew. So listen, if that is somehow an incentive to you, check that out. But of course, I'm doing reality TV content as well, particularly Survivor South Africa has just started up, which is the South African edition of Survivor. I think the name sort of speaks for itself, but it's incredibly well done. It's the first new Survivor that any of us fans have gotten in over a year, and it's been already so much fun. It's myself. It's an Australian Survivor devotee, Shannon Gus. We talk
Shannon's
each and every. She is incredible. We talk each and every week. We just released a podcast actually a few hours before we got on the line here, covering the first episode, almost 3 hours with the next interview. So like we are all in on Survivor, and I'll do some random other stuff here and there. Big Brother's coming up in a month.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, there's a lot happening, but I am grateful to have all this. That I'm not Michael, sitting by being like, I want to be in it. I need to make my own expedition crew. I'm very happy to be a part of many expedition crews, including this very one for this podcast.
Oh, I love having you.
Yeah, it was amazing to have you. I'm so thankful to have two big lost heads guiding me, listening to my crazy theories and reacting to my favorite show, The Nanny. So thank you so much, Mike, for joining us. And please, if you are listening and you were just introduced to Mike, do yourself a favor, show yourself a little bit of self-care. Follow Mike a little bit more, download those podcasts, and really get in depth with what Mike has to say, because clearly he's got amazing analytics and theories and
I mean, listen, we're going back to what I said. Like, again, all I know how to do is just BS. So like, that's thank you for like, I just revealed the prestige, but thank you for setting up that magic trick so nicely, Beth.
Of course.
Yes, and if you want to go follow us, it's at Hot Mess Moments on Twitter. Make sure to leave a review on Apple Podcasts if you can. It helps us out tremendously. You can also check us out on the video version on YouTube, and you can listen to us on Spotify. You can also find me at 8-Bit Dylan. I stream every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. On Twitch, we're playing a wide variety of games, but this is our fun little side project where we're going to talk about some of our favorite shows. And Beth, where can they find you? You
can find me at AugustaWind11 on all social media platforms, including my Twitch channel where I podcast with My Weekly Meltdown. Right now we're doing a patron-only podcast for Dragula Season 2. This week we're going to be really excited. We're welcoming Yovska, who was a contestant on Season 3, for our patrons only. So that'll be a lot of fun. But we also on my channel, I do a lot of collaborative games and streams. And for Pride Month, I'll be doing a few different things, including, well, actually, this will be in the past at this point, but you can go back and watch the VOD on Nereza Konkova's channel, where we'll be talking about asexuality and the ace spectrum for Pride. So very exciting.
Cool. And this has been episode 11 of our podcast. We'll see you next week. And until then,
Toodles.